A shocking story I heard from the heart of Tigray alienated me from sleeping. What if she's my mother? I asked myself. One night, few weeks after the war erupted in Tigray, a single mom was making a dinner to her young kids. Come, let's have a dinner, my dear sons, called the affectionate mother. Around 8 p.m. at night, they both praised God and started to dine with love despite the scarcity of food at their stock. Few minutes later, a stranger broke into their house. It was an Eritrean soldier. In normal circumstances, the likes of such mother, a day, as most address them, are so welcoming and invite to join them for a dinner. However, the guest was not there by accident. He was there to enact his evil acts on that family. He wanted to kill those young children. Please let you kill me rather than killing my offspring, the mother begged the Eritrean soldier. No, I want to kill them and I want you to mourn all your life, responded the cruel soldier. And he did act accordingly with no mercy, leaving the poor mother in complete despair and agony. These are some of the stories leaking from the heart of Tigray. One of the many horrible stories emerging from the war-torn region of Tigray. Despite the depressing stories and reports from the region, we have now started to view some disturbing footages as well. Very hard to even imagine. What if they are our brothers? They are actually. It is so sad, so disturbing, so painful, so heartbreaking. How many days of Tigrayans is going to take before the United Nations to intervene? How many thousands are going to be murdered for the UN to say genocide? How many kids need to be sick and pass away before declaring a pandemic? How many women need to be abducted and raped before declaring human rights violation and crimes against humanity? How many hospitals does UN need to see fully destructed before it declares crime against humanity? How many mosques and churches need to be bombarded before UN wakes up? How many civil services and infrastructures need to be bombarded before UN calls and proclaims that it is a full-fledged destruction in Tigray regional state? And above all, what is going to take for Abiy and his allies to continue with their killings, genocidal acts, destroy the nation, and dismantle the country? Hello and welcome. This is Shimalas Marasaga and you are listening to Eastern Media. The program is Focus and we invite you all to stay tuned. We believe that one rape is one too many, one church is one too many, one mosque is one too many, one death is one too many, one displacement is one too many, one crime against humanity is one too many. I think, by all standards, what is going on in Tigray region state at this point is a horrible act that needs a swift action by all concerned bodies, including the United Nations. By most standards of the United Nations, what is going on in Tigray, I believe, is beyond any reason passing its limit. Death of innocent civilians, massacres of citizens because of their ethnic background, mistreatment and harassment of people for their ideological differences, and destruction of infrastructures and civil service institutions have been observed in leaps and bounds in Tigray. Truth and dawn clears itself as time goes, an old African saying states. Truth on the above stated matter is now becoming visible as days pass. We are observing very disturbing footages of soldiers killing innocent civilians in daylight. We are hearing shocking eyewitnesses of abductions and rapes, mass killings and migrations of hundreds and thousands, and now biblical hunger is getting visible. We can say every inhuman acts are rampant in the region like never before. How long does it take for the UN to intervene in such circumstances? Up to which level can a certain government remain uncooperative and deny access to communities in need of basic needs? This is in fact because of the crisis created by what was described as Law Enforcement Act. However, when what is really on the ground looks a full-fledged and continuous war which is claiming the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Today, I would only like to challenge the UN raising some journalistic questions based on its stipulated documents on law and justice. In the upcoming programs, I would like to also engage experts in the field to have a more understanding on how the law was crafted, how it was being implemented, and what it needs to be done moving forward in the Tigray regional state. This is Shimalos Marasaga from Kel again, and the program is Focus. Please stay with us. Among the greatest achievements of the United Nations is the development of a body of international law, which is central to promoting economic and social development as well as to advancing international peace and security. This is the first paragraph of the document from the United Nations. Well, developing a document is great. It is the basis. However, could it be valuable if it is not turned into action? That's my primary question. I want to ask, as a journalist and as a mere citizen with an origin from that locality, is this law for the consumption of the shelf or a roadmap to implementing valuable strategies? The international law is enshrined in conventions, treaties, and standards. Many of the treaties brought about by the United Nations form the basis of the law that governs relations among nations. While the work of the UN in this area does not always receive attention, it has a daily impact on the lives of people everywhere. Here, I want to stress on the last word, everywhere. So, is Tigray part of that everywhere or a spot in another planet? I want pertinent individuals to answer my question. I'll proceed. The Charter of the United Nations especially calls on the organization to help in the settlement of international disputes by peaceful means, including arbitraries and judicial settlement, Article 33, and to encourage the progressive development of international law and its codification, Article 13. Well, in this case, the likes of such laws seems that the dispute has to be among nations. I understand that. Fine. But from what I see, it appears to me that the war in Tigray has some characteristics that looks like a war between two nations. From what we have heard and seen, well, about 6 countries have involved in the war. And the main intent looks like putting all the pressure and heavy weapons into Tigray. Well, we have heard in the past, time and again, that the political parties in Ethiopia are calling for peaceful dialogue for the settlements of political differences. However, it appears to be my way or no way from the party in power. When will the UN and other international organizations put this noble cause in Ethiopia, which looks like it is at the brink of disintegration? Some cosmetics we are observing by officials and celebrities in Ethiopia serve no good than trying to fool the international community, which has already understood and perceived the truth on the ground. To date, in 100+ days since the war in Tigray erupted, or as many are now labeling since the genocidal acts in the region has started, here are some of the rough estimations on the occurrences in the region. Killings of tens of thousands of innocent civilians of the region, mainly by Eritrean and Abiy Ahmed's forces. The killings sometimes look marching in certain cities and villages, and the acts are like door to door in some of the instances as reports are coming out. There are also absolute terrors by all the allied forces, with some lame justifications like curfews, law enforcement, and accusing of connections with the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF). We have also observed, and still in effect in most regions and cities in Tigray, of looting of properties, destructions of civil service institutions and infrastructures, as well as information and power blockouts. Denial and purposefully cutting of the basic needs, including food, water, and medicines. Tigrayans outside the region were also ethnically profiled and fired from their jobs and stayed at home, leaving themselves and their family in hunger and shortage of basic needs. Religious institutions were also destructed and their precious artifacts were looted, while monks, nuns, and priests were brutally killed. Young women and mothers, including those who are living in absolute religious devotions like nuns, were raped and abducted by the Allied forces, mainly the Eritrean forces. Well, around 61,000 refugees are currently in Sudan. Out of these, over 300 of them were reported to have been unaccompanied and separated children. Due to the bureaucracy by the incumbent central government of Ethiopia, 80% of the people of Tigray are cut off from any foreign aid, mainly from UN NGOs in Tagarus or Tigrayans, mainly the diaspora community whose origins is from that region. According to UN estimation, currently 2.3 million in the region are in need of urgent food aid. Well over 4.5 million people are also in need of emergency food assistance, mainly as a result of the deliberate attack on the people of Tigray at the time where farmers harvest their crops. Some were purposefully and forcibly blocked not to harvest their crops, while most of the farmlands were burned. Due to the lootings and burnings of hospitals and ambulances in the region, only 30 of the 280 ambulances are functional in the region. As some residents of major cities of the region informed some media outlets, most of the properties of the region were also transported to Eritrea by its forces. These armed forces are reported to be present in the region as well. Though there were clear demands by Tigrayans across the globe for independent investigations and for justice to be served, the actions taken place so far are very minimal as compared to the damage done. I think it is high time for the United Nations to intervene on all the humanitarian actions and other needs of the people of that region. Let me also inform you, our viewers, about UN General Assembly. General Assembly in the UN is responsible for forming a forum for adopting multilateral treaties. The General Assembly of UN has adopted several multilateral treaties throughout its history, including Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide 1948, International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination 1965, International Convention on Civil and Political Rights 1966, International Convention on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights 1966, Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women 1979, United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea 1982, Convention on the Rights of the Child 1989, Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty 1996, International Convention for the Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism 1999, International Convention for the Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism 2005, and Optional Protocol to the International Covenant of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights 2008. Correct me if I'm wrong. By the aforementioned parameters and these stated laws, I think the consequences of the war in Tigray and the prior policies and strategies of the central government has at least violated 75% of the rights of the people of Tigray. There are clear indications that the purpose of the war in Tigray is the extinction of Tigrayans, especially those who are not willing to aligning to the move of what it calls itself Prosperity Party. The current statistics on the immigrations, internal displacements, mass death and massacre, famine, destructions of civil service institutions, and infrastructure are clear indications of the violations of most of these laws. As international law assumes a more central role across a wider spectrum of issues, including human rights law and international humanitarian law, the moves and attempts so far, be it because of the impediments by the government of Ethiopia or any other lame reasoning, the UN clearly fails in this regard and might commit a historical mistake if it does not intensify and accelerate its efforts using any measures and means possible. In the international humanitarian law, there are some great ideas too. For example, international humanitarian law encompasses the principles and rules that regulate the means and methods of warfare, as well as the humanitarian protection of civilian populations, sick and wounded combatants, and prisoners of war. The United Nations has taken a leading role in efforts to advance international humanitarian law. The Security Council has become increasingly involved in protecting civilians in armed conflict, promoting human rights, and protecting children in wars. These are really great phrases and fascinating expressions, I could say. But what we have done in the past cannot in any way guarantee the present. In addition, our past action cannot reassure us from being right or appropriate in our decision and actions right now. The fact that we're giving deaf ear might have great consequences in the future. There are also organs within UN like International Court of Justice and International Criminal Justice. Let's leave the International Court of Justice for now, for this is mainly meant for the settlement of disputes among nations. In addition, the central government in Ethiopia is starting that its operation is realizing law and order. However, if I have to use my instinct and my experience as a journalist, chances are high for the parties involved to appear in the international criminal justice, because what is stipulated in its document highlights this fact. For instance, right at the beginning of this section, it is stated, the international community had long aspired to create a permanent international court to try the most serious international crimes, and in the 20th century it reached consensus on definitions of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. By these standards, from the clues we are getting and observing, chances are very high for the perpetrators and active participants in this war, the war in Tigray, to appear in the International Court of Justice. How about the International Criminal Court? The idea of a permanent international court to prosecute crimes against humanity was first considered at the United Nations in the context of the adoption of the Genocide Convention of 1948. For many years, differences of opinions forestalled further development. In 1992, the General Assembly directed the International Law Commission to prepare a draft statute for such court. The massacres in Cambodia, the former Yugoslavia, and Rwanda made the need for it even more urgent. Time may even reveal more facts and the whole truth, but there are clear indications for the current scenario in Ethiopia to fall under these categories. Shame on you guys who lead us to these acts. As the UN documents clearly states, the International Criminal Court, ICC, has justification to prosecute individuals who commit genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. It will also have justification over the crime of aggression, when an agreement is reached on the definition of such crime. The ICC is legally and functionally independent from the United Nations and is not a part of the UN system. In fact, the cooperation between the UN and the ICC is governed by a negotiated relationship agreement. The Security Council can initiate proceedings before the ICC and can refer to the ICC situations that would not otherwise fall under the court's jurisdiction. This is still what is in the paper, in the documents. The words and phrases look like tigers to me. However, from what I observed on the silence of all concerned bodies, I have great concern and doubt. I don't think the parties involved in this war are fully aware of these plain facts and their interpretations. If so, they wouldn't dare continue in their moves against these violations, which, in my estimation, could meet at least 80% of the parameters stipulated in the documents. As an ordinary citizen, the well-being of the people of Tigray always concerns me. As days pass, things are getting worse than better. We therefore, as Eastern media, call upon the UN to act, and act right now. May justice be to those who are highly in need. May justice be served without delay. May the agony of innocent civilians stop sooner than later and once and for all. This has been Shamalis Marasaga Mikhail. Thank you for watching. Adios.